Has noticed something in these islands. At certain times of year, these winds actually shift.
Today is an unusual day. Normally the wind comes from the mountains. Today the wind is blowing from the ocean, from the west. Some of the earlier researchers just looked at the prevailing winds and they didn't take into account the seasonal changes.
These changing winds are called the westerlies. Any ancient sailor would have known about them.
The westerly winds then will come and go. Polynesians would wait for them to come in order to sail to some place that would otherwise be difficult to get to.
This would allow a canoe, like Hotu Matua's, to sail east with the wind at their backs. But there was still a second major obstacle: navigation. How did they pinpoint land in an immense ocean without a compass or any other tool? Nainoa Thompson and the Polynesian Voyaging Society are working to find answers.
I really believe navigation, it's at the core of who we are as people.
Here it comes.
They intend to prove their ancestors were able to sail on epic two-way journeys across the Pacific.
Open the main. Nice and easy, nice and easy.
And that they have the navigation skills to do it.
Let's turn it. Come on.
Thompson is a master navigator.
And then we're going to start to uni the canoe that way.
He trained with one of the few people on Earth who knew the secrets of how the ancients once steered by the stars. Micronesian navigator Mau Pialu learned this craft through oral traditions, passed down from generation to generation, over 3,000 years.
Everything you see on this canoe that we do today, fundamentally, it all came from Mau.
How did the ancients find their way across the vast Pacific? And in a culture with no writing, how were routes and directions passed on? Thompson believes it's through the same ancient art of celestial navigation that Master Mau saved from extinction before he died in the summer of 2010.
When Mau passed away, all of a sudden he cannot come back on this deck anymore.
Master Mau's death left Nainoa Thompson as one of the last navigators on Earth to pass down this knowledge.
So when we come here and start talking about navigation, it's not some trivial academic intellectual exercise. We're setting the course.
Now Nainoa Thompson just needs to prove that this ancient knowledge would have allowed their ancestors to cross thousands of kilometers of open water to find their way to Easter Island. In the middle of the Pacific, the Polynesian Voyaging Society is trying to demonstrate that their ancestors could navigate vast stretches of open ocean long before the compass was even invented.
Well, I'm going to get the sails up.
No, pull them straight, pull them straight.
Thompson's goal is to show that even a crew of young explorers with no modern instruments can find their way using his ancient knowledge.
We're going to hold a course towards Tahiti, so for the first part of the night, and then we'll hold a course back to Hawaii. So it'll be like we're going to Tahiti in the minds of these students, and then it'll be like coming home once we turn around.
Their main tools come out at night. Like his ancestors, Nainoa has memorized a detailed map of the stars. But can he use this map to find his way across immense stretches of open ocean?
The traditional star compass is very old. It's, as far as we know, it's probably 3,000 years old, and it's not magnetic. It's not in a little box. It comes from the heavens. It comes from nature, and it's defined by rising and setting stars that come out of the ocean and go in the ocean every night. Nighttime is interesting because it's a time when it's the best time and it's a time when it's the worst. When there are a night like tonight where there's so many clear stars, we have hundreds of opportunities to keep a very accurate course.
Rising and setting points of the stars provide direction.
So what direction are we heading?
Southeast, west.
The night sky is like a dome that encloses the Earth in space. The dome revolves around the Earth on its axis. The canoe is at the center of the dome, fixed, with the world and the stars shifting in front of them. A perspective that would inspire the inventors of today's GPS.
We use about 220 stars by name. So basically, 220 stars positioned in rise in the east and 220 in the west.
But several hours into the night, Thomson is concerned. They've gone off course. He spots a telltale sign.
If you look at Kamakaunui Maui, you look at the head, the 3 stars in the head, and generally, they make a vertical line towards south.
Kamakaunui Maui is the Polynesian name for Scorpio. For thousands of years, ancient navigators have used this constellation as a heading towards south.
When the Scorpion transits and those stars are vertical, then the Scorpion becomes you're heading towards Tahiti. So we gotta go more to the east. So let's go open the back sail.
Wait on the bunk.
We open the back sail to actually help steer us towards farther into the wind. So in this particular course, it will take us more into the east. So we want to head to Tahiti about 25 degrees.
The crew hopes that they've made the right choice.
Once you make a decision, you kind of go back later and change it. You know, it's done. And you got to go to the next decision, the next sunrise, the next sunset.
This trip is just part of a much larger voyage Nainoa Thomson undertook not long ago. Using these 3,000-year-old techniques, he wanted to see if he could sail the canoe from the Marquesas to Easter Island with only ancient navigation, no modern tools. He and his team found their way and completed the entire trip in just over 6 weeks. Thomson's journey was the evidence researchers had been looking for. The proof that Hotu Matua could well have traveled from Hiva to Easter Island. That his journey may well have been much more than just a legend.
I cannot honestly say that Hotu Matua was with us the whole way. He was navigating us the whole way. But I do know that for us, he was constantly on our mind. His essence, you know, what he had accomplished, what he stood for, was certainly something that strengthened us as sailors on this voyage and gave us a sense of much more privilege to be there. My ancestors were exploring this ocean world, crossing much more miles and millions of square miles of ocean than anybody other culture in the world. So we are relearning how intelligent, how strong, how courageous, and how capable our ancestors were. And that sense of pride in who we were give us a sense of pride in who we are today.
The discovery of Easter Island by ancient Polynesians is one of the great feats of exploration in human history. But some scientists now believe that it may have been just the beginning. Is it possible these ancient Polynesians came to the Americas hundreds of years before Columbus? On the hunt to retrace the voyages of the first Polynesians, the pieces are beginning to come together. These ancient travelers did have the tools and the knowledge to colonize the Pacific. But is there evidence to show they went all the way to Easter Island and beyond? The one real proof will be the blood of the Easter Islanders themselves. Back on Easter Island, the DNA research is just coming in, the final piece of the puzzle.
We've managed to get 21 blood samples here on Easter Island from elders, so it'll be extremely exciting to see how they turn out.
Their goal is to determine where the people of Easter Island originated from and how far their ancestors might have voyaged. The work is underway at a lab in Norway.
Contrary to what a lot of historians and scientists have written about the Easter Islanders, they themselves think that they came from an ancient homeland called Hiva. And that's what we're trying to find out more about with our DNA work.
When the results come back, Sturla is thrilled.
Our work actually can confirm that the ancient Polynesians came from a Central East Polynesian homeland.
This is the proof they've been looking for. The Easter Islanders did come from Polynesia. Hotu Matua, or one of his countrymen, did make the long voyage across the ocean. It's what many have suspected, but it's never been proved until now. The genetic results have one extra surprise.
All the samples that we tested, two were really interesting and surprising to us. These two have some South American DNA deep inside their genetic history.
And that may point to even further voyages.
The DNA results suggest that Polynesians traveled to South America hundreds of years before Christopher Columbus.
It's an amazing theory. The Polynesians beat Columbus to the New World by centuries.
Hey! Hey!
But can science prove it? Back on the Marquesas, Barry Rowlett has stumbled on one surprising bit of evidence: the humble sweet potato.
The sweet potato gives clues to understanding the extent of Polynesian voyaging.
Today, it's found all over Polynesia, but it's not a native plant.
It's native only to South America, and so it had to have been introduced to Polynesia.
So how did it get there?
Unlike the coconut, which can float on the ocean and survive many months at sea and then start growing if it lands on a deserted island, the sweet potato would just sink and die if it falls into the ocean. And so for it to get from South America to Polynesia, someone had to bring it here.
Carbonized sweet potatoes found in Polynesia have been dated back as far as 1000 AD.
Scientists believed that it may have been the South Americans themselves who introduced the sweet potato to Polynesia.
But now Rowlett's discoveries and the expeditions of the Polynesian Voyaging Society reveal that it was the Polynesians who had the knowledge, tools, and skill for long-distance round-trip voyaging. That has changed everything.
Now, we believe that it was the Polynesians who reached South America and then came back with the sweet potato.
Polynesians traded and made contact with islands all the way from the South Seas to South America. They were the great explorers of their age. And the place they set out from was in fact his central homeland, what the Easter Islanders called Hiva. But this homeland is not quite what people had envisaged.
Hiva did exist. It's just that the earlier scientists were looking for it in the wrong form. We believe that this was the homeland from which people left to settle Easter Island, Hawaii, and New Zealand.
Easter Island, Hawaii, and New Zealand form 3 points of the Polynesian Triangle. At over 25 million square kilometers, it's the largest cultural territory in the world.
Europeans and Americans who have grown up on continents tend to think of the land as their home, but Polynesians see the sea as their home. Their view of the world is this enormous ocean or territory with islands throughout.
Rowlett believes that Hiva was the central homeland from where ancient Polynesians created a water continent.
Metaphorically speaking, Hiva may not have been a continent per se, but instead a group of islands that were connected by long-distance voyaging.
At over 25 million square kilometers, the Polynesian Triangle will be the 3rd largest continent on the planet, but it will be doomed to disappear in later years when they stopped long-distance voyaging.
The disappearance of the continent, or the sinking of the continent, then was simply the breakdown in the interaction sphere that led to the isolation of these islands.
For Rowlett, all the facts add up.
This is incredible when we consider that Polynesians were crossing oceans, crossing the Pacific Ocean, the largest ocean in the world, centuries before Christopher Columbus.
So the Easter Islanders' claims do make sense. Their forefathers were some of the great navigators on the most remarkable human journeys of their age, as they charted a course across an island world to colonize vast stretches of the Pacific.
Polynesia is an ocean world. It's an ocean land. And from that perspective, this ocean is not what divides us on the Earth, it's what connects us. This ocean is the highway of our ancestors.